Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Kennedy with SALA. Today I'm here to introduce Rich Finstein, who is the co-founder and CEO of CommPartners, an online education and multimedia event provider that has supported associations for over 25 years. CommPartners works with organizations to consult, develop, and implement solutions that include e-learning development, LMS software, live stream and virtual conference programs, and webinar production services. Rich's vision was to create a culture of responsiveness with a deep understanding of the challenges associations face and engaging their communities through continuing education. So with that, Rich, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Kevin, and welcome everyone. And thanks for the Small Association Leadership Alliance. Really appreciate the opportunities you provide to partner and support your community. You had shared with me just before we got on that there is 18,000 small associations. Is that correct, Kevin? Did I get that right? Something like that?
Yeah, there are just over 18,000 active C6s with budgets of $2 million or less.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant number. So good job in supporting that community. So we're going to talk about this afternoon monetizing your education. You put all this effort into creating your education initiatives, and sometimes what's left behind is the idea of generating income or return on your investment. And so we're going to address that. As Kevin mentioned, I'm the president and co-founder of CommPartners. Like you, we grew as a small organization. We've grown organically over 25 years to evolve where we are today. So obviously with technology and specifically education, it's been an evolution, and we've seen so many changes along the way, and it's the way that all of us as a private organization, you as an association, can evolve, be nimble, and be ready to change and make those investments in the future that really pay dividends. So we're fortunate, and we feel proud of our work with the association community in helping you thrive. So a couple quotes before we jump in. I like this quote. I try to change these up, but from Jonathan Winters, the comedian. If your ship doesn't come in, swim out to meet it. And that's somewhat the theme of what I'm going to be talking about this afternoon. It's the idea that we can't just do things the same way. We actually have to be very strategic in the way that we monetize our education and think of it as a business opportunity. Just like we do at our organization, we spend a good bit of our time, and that's all we focus on, is as a private business. So while you're not a private business, obviously you have many other priorities. This is a priority to think about how dynamically you can create new opportunities and to have your content kind of lead the way and attract people to you. So that, I think, emblem is a sign of ideally what we're talking about. This is, I think, the real reason that a lot of the organizations that we work with and many of you go into education or provide education is it states you can only become truly accomplished at something you love. Don't make money your goal. Instead, pursue the things you love doing and then do them so well that people can't take their eyes off you. I think all of us went into education because we have a passion for knowledge and sharing knowledge. And that's really at the end of the day why I know that most of you do this, and why we're involved in education. And but that being said, if you do a great job of it and you do have a passion for it, then the other benefits will follow, including being able to reap rewards, financial rewards from your efforts. So looking more concretely at monetizing your education, there's a number of building blocks that we consider. And I think it begins with having a strong kind of organizational strategy and education strategy. Those two tend to obviously go hand in hand. I was at a Tagoras conference a while back, and it was Tagoras, as many as you know, is the education consultant, and they put on both on-site online conferences. And it was a great opportunity to connect with colleagues and be a part of that community. And we talked about monetization at that conference, but one of the the things that I realized is that it was segmented and we were only talking about monetizing education as it relates separately from the organization and what's happening within that organization. And so I think it's important to first start, think of it as a SWOT analysis, or looking at opportunities to how is your organization competing? Who are you competing with? Where does education fit in? Where does knowledge fit in? And then looking at education strategy, helping to fulfill that role. So we'll be looking a little bit more closely at those two items, talking about content development. Once you have those building blocks, the foundation, we can think about content. Obviously, as a small staff association, there's limited budgets, so you want to be nimble with how you create content, how you display or present that content. So we're going to be talking about that. And then from there, how is it stylized and presented uniquely? Things have changed in that area, so we're going to address design, the user experience. We hear so much about the UX design, and there's advanced degrees in UX design, and organizations are hiring specialists in that area. We, as an organization, have focused on that area, and as many of the other companies that provide online education. And then we don't think about education as merchandising, but I think it's important. We have some examples to share on that. Of course, looking at how you set up your pricing strategy and your e-commerce, and then what you can do from a marketing to help market your programs. So first, looking at strategy. It's hard to believe that it's now 8 years ago that this research was done and publication was out, the decision to learn. And it's been such a foundation of the way that people think about education within the association community. And the findings that came from this book are really compelling. And they're still most of pretty prominent or relevant today. They haven't, I don't know if another study is underway, but certainly a lot of people still purchase this book and they reflect back to its findings. So one of the quotes from this book was, a member's sense of affiliation with a co-sponsoring association is a stronger measure than demographics. You can read the quote here: gender, generation, level of education, or world location in predicting participation. And I think that really applied, especially, I would say, from 2010 to 2015. I think it was about 2015 where organizations, especially small associations, were feeling the competitive landscape, and things were changing, and private organizations were all of a sudden coming up where they would compete directly with what associations were providing. And so I'd say over the last 5 or 6 years, organizations have had to think differently about their business model for education. And the decision just to join or to be a part of that community is certainly one factor, and it's still an important factor, but it may not be the dominating factor. So in that regard, it's important to think about, I think, what comes first. Getting people to join the organization, and then once they have that affiliation, to be able to support them or serve them up content that it's relevant and meaningful? Or are you leading first with education and education initiatives, which kind of breaks the mold and positions you as a leader in fulfilling that critical component, whether it's whatever type of training or professional development that might be? And so I think what we've seen is organizations are starting to step out, and they're thinking about this differently and transcending membership and reaching out with education as a way to attract people to them, build their following, have that as a first experience, and then once they have that experience, work with them to make it more sticky, if you will, and introduce other opportunities and leading to a full membership relationship. So I think that's a trend. Is that something to kind of think about? How are we leading with education? If so, how do we do that? And organizations that we see that are doing that, they're creating a separate, unique brand or identity for that education. think about hotels, right? So we have a place in Lewis, Delaware that we enjoy going to, and we have dinner in the area quite a bit, and we go down to Rehoboth. And we never looked at this restaurant in a hotel before. I forgot the name of the hotel, but the restaurant was called the Blue Hen. And we never realized it before because it wasn't branded and presented as a separate restaurant. So we read some write-ups on it. We tried it out. It was delicious, wonderful. And I never would thought that the restaurant within the hotel, you're looking at more trendier places separate with their unique identity. But it was a really nice experience. And we may not even been attracted to it if it still was just part of that hotel. I'm just trying to pull an analogy that you have an association. Is the association the best way to present that education, or is there a unique identity? I'm going to present a couple case studies on that, having a unique identity or name, logo, and then getting that logo out there as a leader in how you're marketing that education. I took what I think we've all seen is these unique web-based companies that market a separate product, and that's all they do, and they focus on it, they perfect it, and they get it out there, and they're bypassing the traditional distribution channels. And this came to mind, the away luggage story, because we just bought several pieces of luggage and we went to this company to do it, the away luggage. And I was trying to, in my mind, think about why we did that. We did it, I think, because they've made it simple. They've simplified it and they've added some really cool features, and there's not a defined space for what they were doing. So they filled a space, they filled that gap, and they became top of mind, including, you can see this, they have I don't know if many of you out there know this, but they have a charger within their suitcases. The suitcases are built to withstand kind of the tumbling that it would take through in airports and so forth, and just built really well, and they've perfected it. So this story, shirts, socks, you see it with all these types. So they're kind of bypassing traditional channels. They're making it very unique, and they're moving forward out as a leading brand. So that's thinking about your education. Is that possible to create that clean kind of identity that stands out, fulfilling a specific need? Maybe it's a credentialing need, or it's some kind of onboarding, or different, identifying what's the sweet spot for you within your organization. One of the other things that this away luggage folks did was they got all these orders up front, and they went ahead and they weren't ready for production, so they had a pre-sale. So I've seen more and more organizations do this to monetize. What they're doing is they get a pre-sale, they spell out what exactly is going to be delivered, what kind of training it is, they give a discount to sign up early, and then they're generating revenue before the programs are even developed. So that's something that I took away from this story. I think they did $12 million in their first year. So that's just amazing for these two people that developed this product. So creating a unique brand for your learning, having it separate from everything else to get rid of the clutter, keeping it simple, it's a nice way to present the opportunity. This is a group, the National Credentialing Institute. It's through our friends called Limitless Resource, and they're a credentialing and education planning consultant out of Colorado. And we got together recently, just as a backdrop, we're hosting this site, but they got together with ASAE and said there's not really an onboarding program for the association community. You get the SAE designation, CAE designation once you've been with an organization for 5 years. But what about those people that are new to the community? Where this group, in conjunction with ASA, came up with this idea of what they call microburst modules, which are really another exciting name for micro-credentialing. And we're building this site out to address that specific requirement, the first 5 years with an association. The reason I just bring this up is that they, again, figured out a need within their community. This just happens to be the association community, but they said there's nothing for this group. We're going to go ahead and fulfill this need in conjunction with ASAE and provide opportunities and designations. So now I can get credentials even though I haven't been with an association for 5 years. I can get those credentials and I can share them with other employers, and it just helps me in my professional pursuits. So they're fulfilling that role, which I think is pretty cool. You can also see on the right, they're just getting underway, and they're also doing a pre-order opportunity to start to generate revenue. So they're leveraging that idea as well. So we mentioned the branding and what that can be. This is an organization called the iBank Association of America, and they created a brand called iLearn. And iLearn now is kind of the leading component when they market and they're looking to monetize their education. They're going to say, now in iLearn, we have this, and iLearn will represent everything they have in the site. So the idea is to say, iLearn, when I think about that, I think of quality, I think of meaningful content, that is well done, it's good value, and I'll go ahead and tune in, given the benefit of the doubt that I know it's a simplified kind of representation of what is in the site. It's not moving away from presenting individual programs within the site. Now it's just leading with this unique brand. Instead of iBank Association of America, iLearn is kind of a cooler way to do it. And they've done a nice job, I think, of extending their graphics, building out their logo, and I'm sure with their email promotions and other ways they're promoting this resource now, that'll go along with it. So reflecting back on the decision to learn and that publication, these were the 5 key reasons or motivations that learners had, that organizations, their staff had to participate in one's education offerings. And these are, I think, somewhat traditional. Myself, I've been doing this for a long time. These things were always critical to me to keep up professionally. Of course, we all want to do that. We want to get better in our jobs and learn new skills. We want to be validated for the knowledge that we have, and increase our overall, our experiences and our self-awareness and confidence. All of that as practitioners are obviously critical. I think what's changing is now we're in a sense quantifying that, we're validating that, and we're going even further into lifestyle and to be able to understand who that individual is and support them wherever they are in their journey. So just some of the things that I think, if you're thinking about content, you're thinking about how to connect with your community, these are just some of the ideas that you may consider. First is, and again, it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't have to create a $40,000 course. This can be a webinar. It can be a kind of a paper, a research paper on this. It can be videos or this microburst where you create 5-minute quick video snippets. There's a lot of ways to create content, I think, that's affordable, that's meaningful, and then support it with interaction and peer-to-peer sharing of ideas. So, for example, in my age group, I have to admit, as I started out 25 years doing this, quite a long time. So I'm not retiring, but obviously you have to start early in preparing. So just think about that as starting to divide, in a sense, your community and addressing specifically what's for them. And the platforms now that are available can segment content for each person. And I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. So if there's a series on preparing for retirement, that's reaching out and saying, I understand who you are, where you are in your time of life, and we're going to be that source for you, even though it's not maybe directly related to specifically our profession. We know it's important to you. Onboarding to the profession. The decision to join is not so automatic anymore, right? You're competing. It's something that initially we were talking about transcending the member relationship. So if we can get them involved, then there's a whole onboarding program to the profession. That can be a nice way to get to attract recent college graduates, or even in college or before college, to let them know you're the organization that's going to carry them through their career as far as training, online and education. Obviously, technology, security programs are critical. All organizations need to be aware of that. The steps, for example, as a SaaS company we have to go through are just amazing now compared to what it was 5 years ago. And I'm sure for all of your organizations, you have those same concerns. So you providing that information could be very helpful to your community. And then I think what I was talking about earlier, clearly showing pathways for micro-credentials. It doesn't have to be a major kind of effort that's expensive. It can be certificate programs or micro-credentials with digital badges that show you have that snippet of knowledge or that core competency that allow people to share that in their LinkedIn profile and share those, and you're the one that is giving them those credentials. So I think that being able to just not have access, to the left-hand side is great and obviously good, valuable in its own, but now even defining that further, sharpening that up, making it kind of bite-sized and making it available. And then I think that's so incredible of what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years is the idea of community, and that I want to be able to combine peer-to-peer sharing of ideas with subject matter experts and have that amplify and create that loyalty, knowing that I can connect with people with practical experiences and have that an integral part of each learning opportunity. I'm going to show this in a little bit, but typically when we think about community, and some of you, I know small associations may not be able to afford a private community, but some of you that do, typically that's separate from the learning that's going on. If you have an LMS or you have other learning initiatives going on, the idea here is to combine them, leverage them together. It's all learning, whether I learn from a friend or somebody does the same job that I do in another area, or whether it's from a subject matter expert. So that's, I think, has changed as well. An organization that we're fortunate to support is the National Association of Credit Management. And I've learned a lot, and we've learned a lot from them. They're right here in our backyard in Columbia, Maryland, where we're located. And they've done a nice job of competing. And when we think about defining space, attracting people to them, they introduced this program called Business Credit Principles. And that is the now defined, recognized course for those that are entering the field. So they've worked very hard and they've invested in this onboarding program. It's kind of a fundamental component. If you're going to be in the credit management field, you're going to need business credit principles. And the whole strategy with business credit principles is to go way beyond membership. It has nothing to do with membership. They're just broadcasting this using many different sources to get the word out. And it has its own identity. And they've had so much success in attracting people to the NACM brand. And then they have ongoing training. So once they're using that as the leading edge, and then they have other programs to kind of take people to step them up to higher levels of expertise. And the 3 levels of certification, the business associate, business fellow, credit executive. So they've labeled them and they've made them digestible in a sense and showed that progression and made them that if you achieve those different designations, you're really an expert in the field. So again, as a small organization, it doesn't have to be too complex. You can decide on a few really core initiatives and then leverage those and make them the industry standard. NACM has done a really nice job of that, I think. So let's talk a little bit about content structure. And when you think about content structure, I think it's important to think about that we're moving towards contextual learning. contextual learning is, I think, where there's multiple elements that contribute to the overall experience, and it gets reinforced over these opportunities. So it might be, as you offer a program out there, you might initially blog about it and then have an interview with the subject matter expert. Then maybe that expert does a webinar. Then possibly they do a video with you in a video course, a couple, maybe 4 different microburst courses. So all of that more, think about that kind of in a sense is contextual, that you're having multiple opportunities to share that content. And then around that whole thing are people talking and sharing and reflecting. So contextual works real well, as I was alluding to earlier, in a peer-to-peer sharing of ideas. That's an important part, I think, of contextual learning. And a statistics here from the Association of Talent Development, this woman, Lauren Packlin, 80% of what people actually learn within a job is achieved informally. So while we do spend quite a bit, and again, the more formalized training, specific training, obviously there's a critical need for that, but even for a small association, this idea that informal learning is just as important, I think, is a compelling alternative if you can kind of script this properly. So that's something that I wanted to share. And then the idea that learning is ultimately a change in behavior through this contextual learning, through triangulation of people, context, and need. So it's addressing a need, what we talked about earlier with the luggage piece, addressing that need, building some context, building programs around that need, that's digestible with credentials, and then go ahead and market and fulfill better than anybody else. And then finally, there's the agreement, I think, that social learning is trusted. And when you hear from many voices around a topic, you get a well-rounded discussion. And so that formal training that's happening, once you expand that and have a kind of a real life, real experiences that give that leverage, then it makes it an even more meaningful experience. So from a structure standpoint, for an association, typically you would have, it's the member, it could be a stakeholder, doesn't have to be a member, but just for the case of this diagram, a member, and then the AMS has changed, right? Now it serves a variety of functions, but it's really to provide a home, a record, a centralized kind of place for that participant from an administrative and for just a relationship. The community kind of goes one step further. It now asks that participant to share something of themselves, to participate in a discussion, to share a resource. Not a heavy lift there, but just start to get involved. The LMS, or the learning opportunity, takes it further. We're asking them typically possibly to spend some money, to invest some time. So, but people just, unless that, what we were talking about before, marketing it, the luggage, or marketing that NACM program, that's good to have out there. That could complement, but everything else, the other programs you have in your LMS or your portfolio, you want to build up, kind of from a member on up through these levels of relationship. And actually, if you have both going on, you have the leading edge, then you have the typical association model. They could complement each other really nicely. But again, the idea is to create levels of engagement and have a map, in a sense, that we're going to take this person from here to here to here, and eventually spending money, or at least engaging and in their membership. So now we're moving on to the LMS, and we're looking at content roles, or it doesn't really have to be an LMS. It could be another way, especially for tight budgets out there. But the LMS has evolved. It used to be, I would say, more of a catalog, a kind of a quiet presence. But for especially small associations in this community, it could be a knowledge community. It could be a knowledge center with low-cost options for creating this presence. So, and they can combine these 4 areas. So the live, on-site, and online events. Again, I think, something like 85% or 90% organizations currently offer some type of webinar program. They're inexpensive to do now. To do them well, obviously takes a little bit more effort, but certainly that's readily available. Organizations are getting better at doing those events. And social learning, we talked about community, but opportunities to engage. Formal or customized education, again, it doesn't have to be the $40,000 custom build out with instructional designers. It could be kind of level one learning. Level one learning would be, in a sense, watching something, then filling out a worksheet or turning in an assignment. It could be a combination of elements that are formal, that lead to something significant at the core of that content strategy. And then informal learning, attracting people like through a podcast or news blogs, feeds, the polls, those kinds of things that are elements that support the whole experience. So when you go think about that iLearn example, all of these 4 elements, that's what iLearn's about. We have this knowledge community. There's many different ways to participate. We want to kind of steer this towards the monetization opportunities, but each content can sort of have a role, right? So social learning, you're not going to make money on social learning, but it's attracting people, it's getting people to you, to your storefront. Informal knowledge sharing gets people to your storefront. The more formal, customized education is the more monetizing aspect of this. Continuing on with the LMS experience, most LMSs now support a personalized journey or a personalized learning experience. So associations specifically know who you are, right? They know who their members are. They have all this information on them. So if you're going to, through that integration, it's not just a connection with an AMS, an LMS, a community, it's being able to leverage that relationship in a way that says, I know who you are. Because I know who you are, I'm going to serve you up relevant, meaningful experiences when you log in, just like Amazon does, right? They know the books that you've bought or other purchases. They're going to give you things that are meaningful. And so there's opportunities to do that. So when people log in through either what the information we already have on them or the information preferences that they may set up, is to say, this is recommended just for you. So everybody has their unique version of the LMS or the learning platform, and it cuts through the clutter and it says, it's you and us, one-on-one relationship. And I know who you are and I appreciate you are, and I'm going to serve you up. So back to the retirement concerns, if I segment that out and I know I have an over 50 membership, I'm going to serve them up programs just for them. They're the ones that are more concerned about that in their time of life. So think about that as you create and you go out and develop your learning presence. Have relevancy, this idea of especially this personalized learning journey would be a part of that. And then recommended pathways. So there's content, and then you can have a whole curriculum that's geared towards, welcome to our organization. We recommend that you take these 15 programs. And when you log in, you're going to see those 15 programs. So you can take that even further and get into that that relationship. And then just as part of that experience, we're going to talk about user experience, but clean, simple checkout process. That's really, how many times do we stop what we're doing? We're ready to purchase something because it's clunky. It doesn't feel right. It has to feel right, and that's part of the LMS experience. So just some examples for monetization. This is, in full disclosure, I'm taking examples. We're in the LMS business, so I'm taking examples from our LMS. These are the ones I know, and share them with you. But the focus really is to present the features themselves and focus on the benefits. So offering individual and group training. I think that's, first of all, so many organizations have group members, or they're interested in delving deeper down into those organizations. So the idea is first to say, because I know who you are, again, that comes from the AMS, I'm going to give you your rate. In this case, it's a non-member. And I'm also going to offer you group training. Would you like to add a group? And then there's the opportunity to say everybody in the group, and everybody in the group will get their own certificate or their own credentials. So all of a sudden, from one person, now you have 5 people at that organization that are engaged in the platform. They'll go back to their desk, they'll get an email saying, hey, thank you for participating, now log in to claim your credentials. Now we have them in the database and can mark it back out to them. So it's delving deeper into those organizations. Being allowed to register other users. I think it's just a simple thing, but people really love that. When I go in, I say, you know what, I think Joe is going to be able to benefit from this. I'm going to go ahead and just register for them, you know, or having a colleague, an assistant, whoever that might be. So just making that easy and have a register for other users to get people through the shopping process. And as I mentioned before, showing the specific rate. I don't want to see 10 different rates. I just want to see my rate as a member. Sometimes people have like 10 or more member categories, and you can get just kind of cumbersome. Another feature that I wanted to share is there's the way we all love kind of gifts, and to be able to use, in this case, frequent flyer miles, right? Been around for so long, everybody uses them, but they don't apply them to other things they're doing. The airlines kind of have the market on that. So what a lot of organizations that we know about that we're working with have the opportunity to do something called a prepaid balance, where they will create or gift, based on certain circumstances, a dollar amount, and then organizations can, or the learners can use their prepaid balance to pay for their education. So it's a really nice way to support other initiatives by tying your learning strategy, your monetization strategy, with other areas of your offering. You know, tying it to your membership. You know, renew your membership, get $100 in your prepaid balance. There's an organization that I'm going to share in a minute that's doing that. We have many others that really love that idea. So the idea is to tie those benefits to the overall organization strategy. Another one, of course, that a lot of organizations use is different discounts. You know, join our membership and save 20% on the first 3 months towards your learning program, or attend our conference and get 50% on the conference sessions, use this discount. There's so many different ways, either by months or by specific programs, or, you know, this many uses. So a lot of flexibility on using discount codes and ways of providing value. And this is, you can see, fully integrated into the checkout process. It should be very simple and clean there. So the reward dollars, going back to that for a moment, showing that screen, a little click here, and this is typical. I'm trying to make this representative of a lot of LMSs out there. It'll tell you what your balance is, and then you just click that you want to apply their balance, and you're done. So you always see what your balance is. The other nice benefit of this is that you can issue credit. So instead of giving cash credits back, or I should say on their credit card, you can just say, we've put that into your prepaid balance. You can use that on another learning program whenever you want. A great way to make that seamless and make sure that they spend it on what you're providing. So I mentioned an organization that's doing this, and this is an interesting story. They've been doing this, they were ahead of their time. They've been doing this for like 8 years. The American Psychiatric Nurses Association, they have something called bonus points, which is another name for that prepaid balance that I was just mentioning. And they've connected their LMS to their AMS, and it's an automatic process. And when somebody joins or renews their membership, they get bonus points. So it's you know, that critical time, am I going to join or not? Just to make that more appealing, yeah, I'm going to get those bonus points. That's another good reason for me to join. I'm getting real value out of my relationship with APNA. And then I'm getting that participant to sign up for another education program or pay for another education program. And ideally, all of that is automated. So it's seamless. It's not worrying about each individual member. You know, it just happens automatically through the integration with the AMS and LMS. So also from an LMS presentation or monetization, packages and subscriptions, I think, are really important. People don't want to take out their credit card. Even, I don't think there's Apple Pay yet for this kind of thing. There may be, but I know it's all changing, and it's very cool to use some of the new ways of procuring what we need. But for the LMS and for purchasing education, it's still taking out their credit card and paying for it. And if you can get them to pre-commit to a subscription, a 1 year, even longer, it's a great way to just bypass that whole thing. In this case, I took this from our own internal site that we're offering our own webinars. And this is something that I wasn't even thinking about until we did it, is when I took, this is a long screen. I took a left and a right to fit it on the slide, but it's the whole screen here. And we were offering webinars, one-off. We didn't really concentrate on registering for all programs. And since we created this form and set it up this way, now about 90% people just click register, and then they sign up for all these programs. And I don't even know if they're reading what's in there or not, but the point is now we have, instead of worrying about each program individually, we have all the programs that have very high numbers going forward. We just did the first one, Innovation with Mary Byers, isn't a verb, and we had something like 150 people, but the other two already have 120, and they're already down the line. So it's really cool that you're kind of pre-registering these other programs. Now, if it's for a price, you can say, obviously we're offering these three for a simple price of, and it's a great way to kind of forecast revenue and to be able to ensure that people feel like they're getting value. And you can do that. A lot of it is styling, I think, and how this content is presented. There's a whole conversation around, should I do this through my LMS or should I do this through my AMS? I'm of the opinion, whatever provides, prioritizing the learner, whatever provides the best learner experience, I think is the way to go. Because it can be disjointed when you go back from an LMS to an AMS, then back to, it can be seamless if it's done well and there's flexibility in the checkout process for the AMS. But if it's not, I think there's a decision to make. Do we want to kind of do it on the front end, the LMS, and then feed that information back? Or do we go ahead and have the AMS be the checkout process? And I think just to keep in mind the user experience is critical because we don't want people not moving forward. So from a design experience, the design has evolved so much. I showed that luggage. If you go to that website for the away luggage, it's very clean, a lot of white space. It's the same thing. It's very important, I think, to match your learning presence, if you're using a third-party LMS, to match exactly your website, having it from a styling, imagery, font, layout. You really want to make sure that it feels completely seamless and integrated. And the integration, the AMS community LMS integration is really critical as well. Has to be seamless. They don't even want to think about that. I see exactly what I want to get to it. And then what I think a lot of people leave off is content design. They'll forget to put the presenter's pictures, and there'll be like an icon picture there. It's just not, in many cases, up to speed to match the branding and design of the site itself. So it's really important, if we go back to this, it's really important to have animation and buttons that are attractive and imagery and consistency on every element looks the same. So, for example, if you have this branding icon on the right, that it appears consistent for all elements in your catalog, just an example. So I think that's really critical. There's a book that I'm just reading now, and I know it's been around for a while. It's Don't Make Me Think. So in addition to kind of the graphics and the aesthetics, this book, I highly recommend it for your web presence, for your learning presence. If you haven't heard of it or you haven't read it, I think it's important just to simplify this experience for your learners. Don't make them think just 1, 2, 3, done. I can get to what I want. It's easy. And obviously the book will provide the step-by-step on that. But it's got to be a simple process, clear choices. So aesthetically, it's important. Theming, integrations, that's a foundation piece. And then just simple, intuitive on a micro level. If you do a pull down, you know, the menus and how content gets created and selected and what you say in your language, making it friendly, all that is, I think, really important to get them to buy. And just some of the design examples, I thought I'd show a few of these. The American Society of Interior Design is just getting up and running. You can kind of see their homepage. They're putting recommended just for you right on their homepage. They have some nice widgets, their catalog. Everything is easy and simple to clean to get to. The Michigan Chamber just redesigned their site. They have it by topic, human resources management, finance, and then they have by type. So they're allowing you to get to it either way. So whatever you're interested in, however you want to navigate, you can get there without much of a problem. So I thought I'd just show you some samples. From a merchandising standpoint, again, we don't think of education as merchandising per se, but strategically and psychologically, it's got to fit within the value of the buyer. Does this feel right to me? Do I feel okay buying this? You know, can I check ratings of other people? Is it just a very easy, enticing offer? Do I feel like I'm getting that value? So all those are really, really important. Everything is to get them to hit the buy button or order button. So whatever the fastest, most direct path to do that, that's what should be employed. I did want to mention a group that we're partnering with, and many other organizations are as well, called Essential Accessibility. These guys are amazing, and I was just downloading their screen reader today, actually. They have a new screen reader, and literally you can look with your eyes and move the mouse with your eyes, say click, and it clicks. That's just one example of how somebody who's physically impaired, visually impaired, hearing impaired, it's amazing what this does. And, you know, our organization's partnering with them for our clients, just something to think about. You know, even a fraction of your community uses this, but it just says a lot about your organization offering this. So it just puts you in a really positive light within your community to be inclusive and supportive, no matter what your situation is. I mentioned American Society of Addiction Medicine. They've just, their learning has taken off, obviously, what's going on in that area, but they've moved from $40,000 to $500,000 in 3 years. And they've done it, interesting enough, 95% of their programs are free, which is amazing. So they get people there. They're supporting their community. They're, you know, the good organization that's providing all these wonderful resources. But then their course, the critical course that you need to take is this treatment of opioid use disorder. And that's an 8-hour online program. They're just actually re-recording it. And they've made $160,000 just in the past year on this course. So that's where strategically getting people there, offering that core course that's going to really make it for you, and then being able to afford all the other things that you want to do. They're famous for doing merchandising. So they do a lot of packaging. They send out monthly specials and emails, and they discount. They do target marketing by subset. They're very good at thinking about this, specializing in this. Sometimes I'll have my colleague join me on the call, and she's really proud of what they've done. They've done an amazing job. And they do a lot of repackaging and repurposing. So for a small association, it's good to think in those ways to amplify what happens on site, or to be able to kind of package virtually. There's another group called the Infusion Nurse Society, which actually does a live stream and records content, and then they do a whole follow-up with a virtual course and repackaging of those modules. And they're generating quite a bit of return on those. So from a pricing, that's the hardest thing. It's hard for everybody. Price by balance, you want to have the leader, right? That you don't want to sell yourself short. You want to set that reputation up for quality, that anything you have here is going to be valuable to you. And then you want to kind of balance out what is the real value to create this and the perceived value out there. I think we do it all the time. Most organizations are afraid, and I think you have to put yourself out there. So you have kind of a leader, a high value leader, high price leader, and then you have the other programs, maybe middle of the road, and then those that attract people to your organization. And there's some obviously books about this and whole pricing strategy webinars that just focus on that. But that's generally the way that we see clients doing it that's worked well. I mentioned the subscriptions, the packages, and even multiple year subscriptions, right? So you have your learning site, just don't stop at 1 year, do a 3-year fantastic offer for everything that you're doing in your knowledge center. It's an amazing way to forecast revenue and get people committed. Running out of time here, but I just have a few more quick slides. There's a program we're working with Mary Byers, and she created this site called Lead Learn, and she's going out into the association community and into leadership circles. What we found is interesting here. I just wanted to point this out. We've had very few individual users. It's mostly been group training, engaging whole organizations and signing up as licenses. So I just wanted to add that the idea of reaching out, getting everybody within an organization to participate for one easy price and then have the opportunity to follow up with them individually. So I thought they've done that really well. Mary's done that really well. Finally, from a marketing, most LMSs now allow you to do search engine optimization and set up meta tagging for amplifying and getting unique URLs out there for programs. RSS feeds are a great way for people to be pinged on their phone when there's a new course or a new initiative. You can gather information all the time, intelligent information. Most of the sites will track where people have come from using referral codes. So you can see this newsletter worked or that website worked. And obviously most platforms will have their analytics, but support Google Analytics. So best practices and where to start, just to summarize this, you want to kind of really think closely with your organization strategy before you get to your education strategy. Those two go hand in hand, and that's changing as we talked about. That SWOT analysis, I think, is really important. Strengths, weaknesses, threats, opportunities. Really do a business. We do that at least twice a year. I think all organizations should take a hard look at themselves and what's working, what's not working. Be bold. You know, think about, again, the luggage and what they've done. You can do that. How can you provide that greatest value to your community where they are in their career, supporting them individually, making sure that your LMS aligns with your purpose, your mission, your content strategy, and then, of course, make your e-commerce as simple as possible. We have a community. It's called www.connectcomppartners.com, CommPartners Connect. We have a lot of good discussions going on. Just thought I'd throw that out there. And that's it. So I think we're right at the top of the hour. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Rich. This was a great webinar, very informative for me, and I'm sure for everyone else. Rich, are there any questions? Rich Lawson, that is.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. Going back to the idea of micro-credentialing. So for organizations that might have a barrier or intimidated at the prospect of trying to run some sort of credentialing program in the traditional sense, do you find that micro-credentialing allows folks to step into that idea in a more digestible way for a smaller association?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, I think it's ideal for especially small organizations on a limited budget. It allows them to have some structure and some deliverables for competencies, if you will. This idea of, like, going back to the National Credentialing Institute and what they're doing, they're calling it, you know, more micro bursts. These are quick videos, inexpensive to make, that are informative, that kind of hit, you know, an area where people need help in, and then giving them that reward and starting to kind of generate that income from those efforts to allow them to do other things. So I think it's a good way to get started, and to be able to bring value and bring recognition.
Okay, that's great. The second question I've got here relates to, again, kind of a small association and the resource challenges that they have. And I guess maybe this goes to your service offering, but in general, are there turnkey approaches to offering the kind of functionality you've described here that doesn't put an overly large burden on staff?
Yeah, that's a good question as well, because as you look at this, obviously, you have to reserve the resources to support the investment that you would be making. So I think, like anything, platforms and offerings come in many different forms. The idea from a platform perspective is to get something that is very, very simple to manage, simple to support, giving you the flexibility to kind of grow conservatively. Typically, for small organizations who are just really starting to get into online education or expanding, they start with a few complementary elements that work well and do a really great job of it. And then as they get success and traction, begin to expand and offer additional initiatives, and as they're able to develop content. So the important thing is that your platform has the flexibility to support wherever you are, especially in the beginning, and look the part and represent you well, and then allow you to grow from there.
All right. Well, this was great. Great questions as well. I'll tell you the couple points that really hit home with me was the way you framed up social learning, and then really just member participation and member engagement, and some of the examples where it's about getting them engaged and then if you will, monetizing that engagement. So this was a great webinar. I really appreciate your time. I know we all do, and the rest of your team there at CommPartners, Aubrey and the others. We certainly appreciate your support of the small association community. And thank you for everyone who attended today for your time as well. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.